These presentations are very informative. We're able to get experts in the field, and this session is no different. We have Eric Eisenhammer with us. He's been with us before, and he's an expert on taxes. He helps the Howard Jarvis Taxpayers Association, and also he does a number of other things, including promoting people that run for office. Eric, welcome. I'm glad you're here.
Al, thank you for having me.
All right, you've been doing this a long time now.
I feel like I was just here, and maybe time just blurs together. I don't know.
Well, one of the things that you were interested in talking about was the Taxpayer Protection Act.
That's right.
Okay.
Well, that's a very exciting measure that the Howard Jarvis Taxpayers Association is sponsoring. I don't know about you, but a lot of times they come along in Sacramento and they decide that we need a tax increase, and they don't ask me. and I think they should ask me. And that's actually what the Taxpayer Protection Act would do. It would give the people a right to vote on tax increases. So if in Sacramento they pass a tax increase, we would all have the opportunity to say yes or no. And and if they justify why they feel they need the money, maybe people will vote yes. But they can't just pass it against what we want. And on a local level also, it would require us to be able to vote on taxes, and also it would require the politicians on state and local level to give a specific explanation of what they're going to spend the money on, and actually do that.
It sounds like a good. Who would vote no on that?
I don't know. The people of our state continually surprise me, but it seems like a pretty common sense idea.
Yeah. Okay. Now you're also working on a campaign with Kevin Kiley, who's running for Congress, and he's a present representative in the House of Representatives. And Kevin Kiley spoke in Calaveras County, and he seemed to be very alert for taxpayer issues.
Absolutely. Kevin's endorsed by the Howard Jarvis Taxpayers Association, for one. And I really think that in the Assembly, there is no more accomplished legislator where it comes to fighting for taxpayers and fighting for conservative principles in general. He's taken on Gavin Newsom in court and won. He's championed numerous proposals. He got numerous proposals that benefit taxpayers and benefit our conservative values. And he's gotten specific things done because of his tremendous legal knowledge. He's a Harvard and Yale educated attorney, so he's a really smart guy. I wish that I was as smart as him, but he's able to find the things they're doing. Like, for example, when the legislature and Kevin De Leon hired Eric Holder, Obama's attorney general, at I think $25,000 a month to file frivolous lawsuits against President Trump. Kevin Kiley said, hey, you can't do that because there's a law that says in the state constitution that you're not allowed to hire an outside contractor to do work that we already have state employees qualified to do. So he said, so is nobody in the army of tens of thousands of attorneys they already have on staff for California competent to do this work? So that actually got Eric Holder fired by Kevin raising that. There was a law passed that I actually worked on called the California Legislative Transparency Act that required a 3-day notice for taxpayers and citizens to be able to comment on proposed bills. The legislature, the Democrats in the legislature, were just ignoring that requirement. And Kevin Kiley held them accountable and actually made them redo hundreds of votes saying, like, hey, you're not allowed to bypass the people. So he ensured that the people were able to have a say in that process.
Boy, that's very interesting. Maybe we should have Kevin as a guest.
You absolutely should have Kevin. I can help arrange that if you want.
Yeah. The next item is the Prop 13 update on Prop 13. Prop 13 kind of limits the amount of taxation on real estate that people can be subject to.
That's right. I mean, how fortunate are we to have Prop 13? I'm just curious, when did you buy your home?
Many years ago.
Okay.
I'm 82, so we know it was less than that.
Yes. I bought mine, I think, 10 to 12 years ago. And lately, we've seen property values have gone up so much, and were it not for Prop 13, all of our property taxes would be going up in tandem. In fact, in Texas, they're experiencing that. I'm sure you know people who have relocated to Texas for tax reasons.
Yeah, we do.
So do I. And Texas really is quite a good place in a lot of ways for taxpayers and for less regulations. But that's one place they don't have a property tax protection. So a lot of people are really seeing their property taxes go up out of control.
So I understand that most of the attacks on Prop 13 are to try to change it so that businesses would be paying a higher tax. Is that right?
That's true. And in fact, 2 years ago, there was a proposition that would have done exactly that we worked on and helped defeat. But the folks that are pushing that agenda are still going. So that's absolutely something they're trying to do.
So I guess in a perfect world, you wouldn't need a Prop 13, but the world is not perfect, and sometimes the taxpayers are not treated fairly. So the only recourse is the ballot box.
Yeah, what's that saying about, if the people at the government were angels? You know that saying I'm thinking of, that, we wouldn't need, if people were angels, we wouldn't need government, but the people at the government aren't angels either. Something like that. I know I mixed it up a little bit. But yes, it would really be nice if we had a political class that we could just trust to not constantly try to raise our taxes. But since we don't have that, we need measures like Prop 13.
It's kind of like there's two ways that people can deal with each other. One is by force. And the thieves know that's the way you get property without having to work for it or having an agreement. And the same thing with government and taxation. Follows the same principles of extortion and taking money by force, and then actually putting people in prison that refuse to pay.
Yes.
It's a pretty serious thing, taxation. But when we get back to basic fundamental rights, it seems like the best possible arrangement is voluntary agreement. And that seems to be what our Constitution is based on, because it recognizes the rights to life, liberty, and property. And the Fifth Amendment and the 14th Amendment, very clear. Different than any other civilization on the planet. Although some of the civilizations follow the same principles, but not so clearly as our U.S. Constitution.
Well, like you said, putting people in jail for not paying their taxes, ostensibly we follow some really noble principles, but sometimes when you observe how it actually works in practice, you really wonder how much those principles are really in effect.
Well, that's a good point. So it makes sense to have most of the association people have with each other be voluntary. In other words, privatization. If you don't like what a company is producing, go to another one.
Mm-hmm.
You don't like what government's producing, better keep your mouth shut.
or or vote out the people who are making those bad decisions.
If you can.
If you can, yeah. Or or organize to educate your community. Sometimes I think that's part of the problem too. It's not that people would necessarily agree with some of the things that are being done by our government if they were really aware. So sometimes some of the problem is just the awareness level of our friends and neighbors.
Can you blame a person who's taking care of his family, going to work,
That's right.
trying to be a good citizen, and also try to be an expert on government and to monitor what government is doing on top of everything else? It takes a handful of people.
Well, and that's a
Not a majority.
great point, and I think that's another reason for people like you and me who are involved. That means that our responsibility is then even greater, and part of that responsibility is to be able to talk to our friends and neighbors and be thoughtful in the way that we do that, so that we don't just overwhelm them with a bunch of tedious information that they're just going to be like, oh my goodness, I can't even deal with this. But just communicate with them in a way that is easy for them to understand, and and be willing to answer their questions if they have them, but not overwhelm them.
Yeah, that seems to tie into Dale Carnegie, who wrote a book, How to Win Friends and Influence People. He also had a course. I happened to take his course, and one of the things I learned from Dale Carnegie and other great motivational speakers was that you never attack a person, because if you attack a person, you're closing a door for him not to come over to your side.
Right.
He will be totally defensive. If, on the other hand, if you could show that an idea is not very good because it doesn't give good results, and you show it by evidence, you can win over the other side. And then, and by doing that, you solve the problem.
I always take it as kind of a basis point for me when I talk to people about politics, that no matter what somebody's opinion might be, I'm not going to try to convince them of anything or change their mind. And if they don't want to know what I have to say, I won't even discuss it. I mean, we'll just talk about something else. Right. But if somebody is interested in knowing my perspective and will be respectful of me when I share it, I'll share it with them. And I feel like that people not feeling pressured is actually, ironically enough, a lot of people wind up coming around and agreeing with me because I'm just doing it in a very non-threatening way. That's just like, well, here's my opinion, take it or leave it, I'll like you either way, but this is how I see it.
One of the things that you're an expert at, besides taxes, is the Howard Jarvis Taxpayers Association. Why don't we talk about that a little bit, because they've done a lot of work.
Yes, they absolutely have. And I mean, that organization's been around for over 40 years now, fighting for taxpayers with over 200,000 members in California. Membership is only $15 a year. So, it's very affordable, and it's stayed at $15 a year for a long time. That's what makes me and a lot of other people involved in that organization on staff able to do what we do to fight for taxpayers. So people should really, if they want to join, that's super appreciated. Or even just follow it on Facebook, follow it on Twitter or Instagram. HDTA.org is the website for them to go to and check it out.
HDTA.org. Did you have your pencil?
And if they didn't, I'll say it again, HDTA.org. But from there, the organization's always doing all kinds of new projects. It's very, very active. It's always got action alerts. So there's a lot there if they go there and receive the emails. You know, I send them out, and they're always telling me, send this out, send that out. Sometimes I'm like, oh brother, another one. But they do a really good job keeping people informed.
Yeah, I know, we get their newsletter.
I send that.
Yeah, did you write that?
I don't write it, but I'm the one that sets it up and sends it. So,
what are some of the things that the association does besides the Taxpayer Protection Act?
well, you've got a lobbying arm for one. So HDTA is the taxpayer voice in the Capitol in Sacramento. There's a legal arm. So taking on politicians on a local or even statewide basis if they abuse taxpayer rights.
What have they done lately, the legal arm?
You know, I don't work in that division, so honestly, like I couldn't really give you any tremendously articulate specifics, but there is a section on the website that lists all the cases, and you know they're very active, and you know we're lucky they're there.
Okay, that's cool. And besides the legal arm and the Taxpayer Protection Act, is there anything else that they're involved with?
There's one other measure that is called the Repeal the Death Tax campaign, and I think we talked about that last time I was on. That is to repeal a measure that was passed a couple of years ago that prevents people from passing on Prop 13 to their children. So that's very important, and that's another big focus for HDTA right now.
Okay. Now, I understand there's school issues that taxpayers are concerned about.
You know, I've got one of the ladies that works for me at the office is on a school board, and we were talking about this the other day. Just the failure of Sacramento, excuse me, and the failure of educators to prepare young people for the workforce, and really where I see that the most is in terms of just knowing like workplace etiquette, even knowing to get to work on time, or you know, or to respond to people. That's just not being taught. So
of course, that raises the question of school choice. If parents feel that their children are not being taught properly, they should have the power to take the money that are already taxed and go to a non-government school and use that tuition for that.
And I think that besides the parents even, you know, when I was in school, what most of us wanted to learn was skills that would actually make us money later on. So I don't even know if it's just the parents that would care about that, but they're doing a disservice to the kids, and my guess is that a lot of the kids know that.
You know, when we get into the older grades, I think the kids would start thinking about careers a little more than when they're grade school. Probably.
Yes, totally. Yeah, that's probably not even relevant to, you know, so, you know, telling third graders, you know, when your boss sent you an email, respond to it promptly. That's probably not necessarily a relevant second grade or third grade lesson, but definitely later on.
I remember when I was a kid, my attention was first horses, and then cars, and then girls. And of course, after I got married, I went back to cars and horses.
You know what? When I was in school, did you ever see Ferris Bueller's Day Off?
No.
So it's about this kid who ditches school for a day, and he takes his best friend with him, and his best friend was a guy named Cameron. Ferris was like the popular kid, and Cameron was his friend who just kind of tagged along. And Cameron did not like school and didn't want to be there. And they're talking about like, well, what do you want to do after high school? They're in senior year of high school, and Cameron, they asked Cameron, so well, what are you gonna do? And he's like, I don't know, college. And they're like, well, to do what? He's like, well, I don't know. And they're like, well, what are you interested in? He's like, I don't know, nothing. So that was me. That was me in school. I was like, I don't want to be here. I'm not interested in any of this. But I don't know. I don't know if I blame them for that or blame me for that. But probably a mix.
Well, maybe there's no guilt, fault, blame. It's just being a human being, I suppose. As long as you got food to eat and some movies to watch, and you're warm, what else could you want?
Yeah, no, that's a good point. I think probably one of the best things my parents ever did for me was when they threw me out.
Well, maybe
For real.
Maybe best thing for you.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. 100%.
Yeah.
Because
Of course, it was good for them.
well, sure. But no, like, because just like you said, when you've got food to eat and movies to watch, life is okay. But when you have to think about that, that's when you start to get creative.
Yeah. Well, we have about 5 minutes remaining in this session. One item that we haven't talked about was the gas tax.
Yeah. Well, we have a tremendous surplus right now. In our state government, you may have noticed that our prices of gas have dramatically risen recently, and that's why Republicans in the legislature, including Kevin Kiley, introduced legislation to suspend the gas tax for quite a while. And unfortunately, the Democrats in the legislature shot this proposal down. And I think that it is clear to most people that if they have the money, if they've got the massive reserves, tens of billions of dollars in reserves, this is something they could do to help working families in California. But unfortunately, they weren't interested in that.
How much money would, well, okay, say you go to the pumps and they're $5 a gallon, and you suspend the gas tax. What would your cost be then?
I think it'd save about 60 cents a gallon.
Well, that's pretty.
Yeah,
Pretty
I mean, my
substantial.
truck, I have a 20-gallon tank, so, that's over $10 per fill up, so that definitely makes a difference.
And then, okay, with the reserves that we have, the gas tax money, how long would that last if we didn't, if we stopped, and we ended the gas tax for temporarily, how long would that period be?
I think that what was proposed was 6 months, although, if you really were to say, well, how much reserves do we have as relates to gas taxes? And I might be wrong, this is an off the top of my head number, but I think we could go maybe 10 years.
That'd be awesome. Well, it seems to me that the purpose of the gas tax is to cover the cost of maintaining and building our roads.
That's right.
So it costs money to build roads and it costs money to maintain them, and that amount should be known.
And it also raises the question, if California's gas taxes are the highest in the nation by far,
Right.
which they are, then why are our roads not the best in the nation? I mean, they're the worst.
Yeah.
They're one of the worst.
Yeah, that's a good question. And Perhaps with more shows like this one, more people would become alert to that, and then we can bring about changes.
And if people would just not be afraid to ask questions, you
Yeah.
know. I was talking to my dad earlier, and I told him that one thing I would ask of everybody, and you know, this is relating to politics, but also to life, is don't just come to a consensus with your friends and neighbors because you heard something somewhere or you think it's what everybody believes. Examine it for yourself and try to decide for yourself whether or not it's true.
That's a very good point to end the show. And I want to thank you for watching Taxpayer Alert. We'll see you next time.
Thank you, Al. Good to see you.